So I'd like to welcome Neema. As I said, Neema most recently was one of the founders of this company, Spire, and the creator of a product that he's about to talk about, which is really an incredible introduction into the wearable space, really focusing directly on well-being through measuring the breath and understanding one of the key physiological factors that relate to how you feel. But before that, he really has an incredible background. He created, as a student, which is really amazing, what's called the Calming Technology Lab at Stanford while he was doing his PhD. And it's sort of unheard of for a student to start their own lab, but Neema sort of broke the mold and did that. And it really was one of the first dedicated labs looking at how technology can be used to increase human well-being. So he's really a pioneer in this space. We're really lucky to have him and his family here. So Neema, please welcome up to the stage.
So you guys, do I need a mic? What do you need?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe not.
Do you need it for that or video or anything?
I think we're good.
We're good. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you all for being here. My name is Neema. I'm very excited that my wife and my daughter are here, Miriam and Raya. Like, they don't normally get to be in these kind of events, so if I'm distracted, you know why. She's a little bit. Not my wife. So I mean, this is really exciting. What an amazing group of people gathering. I mean, you know that you're into this topic when you're willing to come to school on a Saturday. So I honor and respect all of you. I hope that it's interesting enough and engaging enough. And if you have any questions, just feel free to raise a hand. We'll just do it. Let's just keep it casual and fun, so it's just a conversation. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about how this started, and then I'm going to show you what we've created and get feedback from you guys. And hopefully, after the talk, or maybe in the lightning rounds, we'll demo and allow people to come and try Spire out, because it's pretty fun to use. So this whole endeavor started out when I was at Stanford doing my grad work and realized that, I don't know if you guys have heard of BJ Fogg. So he's a behavior designer at Stanford. He created the Persuasive Technology Lab. And the idea was to study the way that technology would change our habits of eating, drinking, exercise, these kind of behavioral habits that we engage in. And I was kind of taking this class and I was like, wow, like that's a whole different way of thinking about how technology, the role it has in our lives and how it can be employed for human well-being. But I can ask myself, like, well, what behavior would I want to focus on if I was going to think of myself as a behavior designer? And that's when I took inventory and thought to myself, wow, you know, when I'm in the shower, when I'm in these kind of experiences where I'm able to just be totally present, I have great insights. And then I started to realizing that I was attributing it to the shower. But it was the same person that was in the shower versus that's here in front of you. So it was like, well, that would be cool to kind of study that, because it certainly isn't these magical droplets of water that are having the effect, but rather a state of mind. I'll skip that in the interest of time. So at the end of the day, what we ended up with from that initial insight to today is something we call Spire, which is this device here. I'm wearing it right now. This is a model of it, actually. Some of our actual functional units are in testing and in loans. But you can see it here. It's quite discreet. And I'm going to show you some of the cool things that happen along the way from that shower to this moment. One of the things that happens, this is like one of the first posts from the Spire blog. It's called Love, Breath, and a New Kind of Technology, which was like, true story, which was me being on a bus with Miriam in Laos and realizing that, wow, like I only have a certain amount of time and energy to focus on work stuff. So if I was to throw out everything that wasn't the one thing that I should be focusing on, what would it be? And the answer I came to was to change the way the world breathes. And that was a very simple way to say what I was trying to do. It's not necessarily to change the way the world breathes, but it's to bring awareness and mastery of the breath and how it can be employed in our lives for different purposes, and make that a first-class data type or a really enabling technology in the same way that text messaging is so enabling with communication. So I came back to Stanford from that rendezvous in Laos, and I realized that at Stanford you had this interesting dichotomy of people that are really interested in well-being and this high quality of life and nature, and there was a lot of encouragement to connect, and there was meditation classes and all that, but then there was also this incredible high fragmented attention and high distraction and high engrossment in the technology, and to the point where people weren't even noticing the beautiful gardens and the buildings and the architecture and art that's been created there. So it was like this amazing place to do that. And what I found was if I gave students and researchers a name, a way, a vocabulary to think about what was possible with technology, that people started kind of coming out of the woodwork, and from different departments, different majors, undergraduate, graduate, to professors, being so taken by this idea of I love technology, I like using it, I like creating it, I like researching it, that's kind of what I do, but there's something missing. Just putting the gas on more and more and more wasn't bringing the effects that they anticipated it was going to bring them for their own health and well-being. So when we talk about calming technology, we don't mean relaxing technology. We mean calm. So a quarterback in a pocket is calm. There's a lot of noise happening around them. There's a lot of input. There's a lot of stimulation, but there's an ability to be present, a lack of anxiety and doubt, and there's a kind of settledness. You could call it being present, you could call it being all these other things, but this was the way I could say it in a way that was easy to digest and kind of be that would be cool. I'd like to have some more calm in my life, and I like technology. Yeah, and you want the nod. The nod is very good. Trying to communicate ideas to people. So if you'd love to see some nods today, it would be great. So as I started creating that, I started getting deeper, and I was like, wow, I could totally, if I was going to do one thing for my job, it would really be fun to just focus on breath, technology, and helping kind of create a vocabulary and empowering other people to create new kinds of technologies that were a representation of their true values and human values. So as that was happening, I'm walking through airports and seeing these kind of magazine covers, and now these are just a dime a dozen. But 5 years ago, they were just kind of starting to trickle out. So it's just kind of fun. And I always find it so nice when I see one of these, because I'm I thought it was only me that's dealing with these issues and is so overloaded, and everyone else seems normal, but everyone is just so distracted and feeling overwhelmed, and all the things that we don't even have to repeat because we're so used to it by now. So I'm going kind of fast, I realize, as I take a breath. But I came back and I started thinking, okay, this great idea of calming technology, okay, but how do you make a scientific, rigorous course of study around this idea? Because this is Stanford, and people want to really understand and create a science and methodology, techniques, and have a formality to it, a way of speaking and disseminating information in a scholarly environment that would kind of hold up and be allowed to be published and discussed seriously. So I had to get really serious about it. And getting serious about it meant showing diagrams like this, and using big complicated words that had to be described, and making people feel this is a thing. So so this diagram is actually one of my, what's that?
Science.
Yeah, right. Get serious. So this diagram turned out to be one of my favorite diagrams about stress, because the science of stress is this whole Pandora's box that I had to open for my dissertation to try and unpack and kind of figure out how to get a handle on it, and how technology could have a role in addressing. And I'm going to just quickly walk through this diagram, because this guy Bruce McEwen, he's awesome. like of all these scientists that you would want to like get into if you're interested in stress and anxiety and the physiology, the neurophysiology of how the body reacts, because it's all related to consciousness in some way. He's a baller. So first off, there's individual differences, which he acknowledges, which is great. There's all these environmental stressors, trauma, abuse, which is kind of like from the past, which you can interpret pretty broadly, major life events that are happening. And then in the brain, or the body, or the mind, or whatever, there's some kind of perceived stress. And that's really key, because to a scientist, stress it's not like there is some stress. There's stress depending on if the person perceives it as stress. Like me speaking in front of a group, this could be stressful, or it could not be, depending on my perception. So then there's some kind of behavioral response. So a fight or flight response, the heart rate rises, the breath becomes shallow, people start smoking, have some alcohol, I'm nervous in a bar, so I go and have another drink, stuff like that. There's also these physiological responses, which are more of the, as I mentioned, the skin conductance, the heart rate, things like that. Then what happens, and this is where it's like really cool, is that there's this thing called allostatic load, which is kind of like, if you imagine, we demo this for our students, like we take milk in a kettle and we like slowly turn the heat up on it, and then we like keep heating it, and the load, the allostatic load just keeps getting hotter and hotter, and then it like boils over. But if you keep it low, keep that heat low, and you give it a chance to rest and all that kind of stuff, you have like a nice drinkable milk. If you keep it too high, then it like boils over and it burns out. It's like, wow, like, that's how I feel in my life. So, and it's a fun demonstration. Now, that's kind of stress.
What is the word allostasis?
Allostatic or allostasis, it's related to homeostasis. So stress is anything that disrupts the body's ability to maintain homeostasis. Right? So one of the things here is that of all the physiological responses that occur, you start sweating, pupil dilation, heart rate increases, muscle tension, all these things, there's a few of them that we also have conscious control over. And one of them is breath. Ta-da! Like, it's a really cool physiological indicator. And people have known this for thousands of years. That's why all of us here have tried some kind of breath-related practice. It is kind of described as sitting on the precipice between the conscious and the subconscious. I'll give you another example. So, if the mind is influencing how you're breathing, and you can change the way you're breathing, it's kind of like being able to go back into the brain very directly. Some of the other physiological things that happen are like your heart rate rises, or your heart rate variability gets all stagnant. Your kind of facial muscles will change, and you have some conscious control over those, but most of them, you don't have any control over them. So that's why people have been studying the breath for so long. That's why people have been using the breath for so long as a way in, as a way to understand, as a way to kind of peek in. And that's why the Buddha was a kind of scientist that went to observe, like a scientist does, observe the state of the mind. And the way he did that was through the breath as a way in. So I was kind of like, I kind of knew that, but it was really interesting to see how scientists were describing it and coming up with language to describe it that they were comfortable with, without just saying, oh, you go and you meditate and you observe these things and you have these intuitive experiences of it and you feel like they're true, but all that stuff that's like good to have, but to be replicable and be able to be communicated, it had to have a scientific framework. So then there's like these other things that I started finding in the literature when I'm doing this dissertation, where my dissertation was essentially like, I really want to do this kind of study about breath and technology. I got to figure out how I'm going to like make people pay me to do that, and how I'm going to get people to fund me to do that, and how I'm going to be able to like, be able to give this talk today and convince people of this in a credible way. So one of the things I found during that whole dissertation time was this figure. This is a very famous figure, actually. What it says is, if you have some arousal, some kind of like pressure, stress, you perform better. If you have too much, it kind of drops off. And there's like interesting physiological reasons for why that is. But if you don't have enough, They also don't like performing kind of to the class. And this is like, you can't really argue with that, but it's very simple, which is great, and that's why it's so powerful, but it's a bit simplistic. Because the truth is, it doesn't take into consideration time. Like, if you're staying here all day long, what effect does that have? And the fact that we do go here, what effect does that have when we come back? There's a lot of things that aren't explained with this. And to be honest, one of the things I tried to do in my dissertation was come up with new models for this, and it's tricky. So I had some attempts, but they were never great, so I left it aside. Instead, what I decided to do was focus on design. Focus on the design of technologies that would address this issue. So what this is a Dr. Seuss piece of art. If you guys haven't looked into his artwork, his children's books are amazing, but his art is also incredible. This work is called Calm in Spite of It All. And the medical director of Kaiser Permanente told me about this piece. And he said, oh, you have to check it out. I have a big framed one on my wall. And if you look, there's like all this stuff happening, and the three characters in here are like calm in spite of it all, which is kind of like life, right? So what we did is, at the D school, which is the design school, I created this class called Decompress and Designing Calm. And the idea was like, okay, what is this idea of calming technology, and so on. So we tried to help students create technologies that created calm in people's lives. The New York Times became interested. They were like, wow, this is so cool. You know, these people at Stanford are people who create all this distracting technology are also trying to do something about it. Like, okay, let's go check it out. So I would actually have my students do different kinds of calming experiences. And my stance there was that it had to be experientially understood, not only intellectually and analytically understood, in order for one to design. Because design is kind of like the modern poet, the modern day writer, the modern day person that's going to be influencing so many people's lives and their states of mind because of how these subtle things are designed, that those people have to be super kind of in touch and connected to the effect that they're having on users. So we would like do these calming experiences, and then we would go and design technologies. So what kind of technologies? Things like this. This was actually not designed by my students, but it's like every time you check your phone, it starts at 100, but every time you check your phone, the number goes down. So like it's just a way to kind of get a sense of how often you're checking your phone throughout the day. So you start at 100 and you end the day at like 22, or you ended at like 92. It's a very different kind of day. So it's about developing awareness in people. This one, much geekier, but it's giving people estimates of how long in time each email would take them. So instead of coming up to a bunch of email and being like, oh my God, I'm so overloaded, I don't know what to do, you'd be like, I got a minute. Just give me one email. I got 1 minute and that's all I'm gonna do. Let the computer figure out, okay, you got 1 minute, here's the email you should do. And then, okay, that's a very different feeling of like doing email rather than what we have now. We even did experiments in libraries where we put nature scenes of different resolution and different fractal depth. And the reason for that was we found that a static photo of nature, while calming in a way, was different than high fractal depth photos, which have high resolution no matter where you look in the photo, just like nature. If you're sitting on a bench in nature, no matter where you look, you can look more, you can look deeper. And that depth of focus is very natural. And so we wanted to replicate that. We found that it was more calming in studying. This was an example on an Android phone here where you could put your finger on someone's face in your phone and you could feel their heartbeat. To add a whole different layer of communication so you could feel the person where they're at, not just like processing their text message like a robot, but with really feeling like this is a person that wrote that and this is how they feel right now. And it's trying to get similar to the eye contact that we usually experience. This is a fun one. We put real grass on desks on the bottom here. That's real sod. There were worms in there, and it was like kind of messy. But you know how many times this is a real company? How many times that as these professionals are working, they would just put their hand on the grass and smell it. Oh God, organic matter. It's like I am a being. I am not just a virtual information processing unit. So yeah, we did all types of really fun experiments. But the one that kept kind of, I remained focused on was the breath, because of that insight that I had on that train in Laos and realizing that it was so tangible and so measurable. And then I found this comment that totally reminded me of why I was doing it. And I felt like that's kind of what the breath is. It's the thing that is modulating how we experience every moment. We often have no awareness of it. So if you can't measure something, you can't improve it. You can't have awareness of it. It's not necessarily you can't, but it's just easier to. And it's a nice tool to be able to. So that became very inspiring for me. And I was like, okay, well, there's no breathing sensor out there. There's no way to get the breath, my breath, into that computer and into this phone. Like there was just no way. So we were like, uh-oh, we gotta create hardware. And then it was like, I was terrified of hardware because I had no idea how to do it. I still don't do it away, but I work with people who do. So we started creating these like straps and things that would go around your abdomen to start to capture that breathing pattern and send it to the computer wirelessly. So we were doing some of the first Bluetooth low energy transmissions on mobile phones and hacking with them. So I would actually wear these things, and my subjects would wear these things under our clothes, and with this pipe dream of like, yeah, you know, what if we made this like really cool string, kind of like these, you know, Indians would wear around their bodies, and it was like this spiritual string that you'd wear here, and I had this whole thing, and I was like, that is never gonna happen at scale. And that was part of my kind of thing, was I wanted to really make this something that was like, everybody could nod. That was my goal. Everyone could nod. Like, that's right. So then I started looking into, sorry about the, this text is unavailable, but it's here. I started looking into these annals of science textbooks and conferences, and I found like there's this whole body of research that people have been studying breathing patterns in the breath for a long time, but not doing anything with it because there's no sensor. There's no way you can use this data. It was just kind of interesting to the scientists that, hey, when people have different states of mind, like focus on something, or like doing a math problem, or like riding a bike and relaxing, the breathing becomes so different. You know, I mean, look at this. Look at like focus on something versus relaxing. I mean, it looks like a relaxing wave. It's like, that's so easy to understand. Like, why don't we just make that really actionable and show it to people so they can really understand it, so we get a lot of knowledge. And then we started doing more research and finding that these people in Sweden were studying flow experience. Which is like, okay, what is flow? But let's just say there's flow and it only happens in these certain situations. Well, one of the things that happens is that you start breathing deeper during flow state. And you start breathing more consistently and smoothly. Now, what I would then do is I would go and meditate, because I needed to have that experiential understanding, that intuitive understanding of why would the state of mind change the state of breath. Like, I knew intellectually it was there, but I wouldn't really understand why. And luckily, you don't need any sensor to do that. You don't need anything. You just need the will and attention. And I found, just like all of you I'm sure have found, is that, you know, when I'm meditating and I'm like seeing what thoughts are coming up, those thoughts, when I'm like really quiet, those thoughts are like having this very direct impact on inhale versus exhale. And to the point where it was like, inhale was like clenching up. It's a very, very subtle thing, but inhale is kind of like, no, I need to survive, so I need to take air. Like, I don't wanna, am I gonna make it? The next breath? Like, no. It's like, it's essentially this kind of little, and this is, I never talk about it like this, but this is the consciousness hacking people, so we're gonna just go there. Like, oh my God, like that versus this exhale. And I would sometimes do these like incredibly long exhales. I just felt like I was doing like one breath a minute, you know, like exhales, and I was like completely confident that I was gonna live to see the next breath. So I didn't worry about it. And with that lack of worry, lack of fear, lack of clenching, lack of all that, there was just there. And so then I was like, okay, I can see how these yogis would just sit there and not breathe for 45 minutes or 45 years or whatever they do, because they were just like, they were just trusting and not, you know, not clenching, and that was kind of how it was happening. That's how I was explaining it. Oh, so this was a study where, yeah, it's not very clear, but they did trials where they would increase the amount of flow. I mean, I won't go into how it was like in artistic experiences. That's what they were doing. So these were like composers, artists, things like that. Yeah.
So does that imply you can provoke and maintain flow through breathing exercises?
That's a great question. Right. So does that mean that if I breathe a certain way, then I'm going to create flow? And I think the answer is no, because we can all follow like a very prescriptive breathing pattern, and it's not going to like immediately have flow. On the other hand, it does have an effect on the mind. I mean, flow, I don't even want to get into flow because it's a whole other thing. But I will say one thing, that when you measure with your experience, your observation, or you measure it with a sensor, there's incredible subtleties to even the transition between inhale and exhale. Even the way that the inhale stops and starts. All these things have direct representation in the mindset. So when we're trying to do a certain breathing pattern, we're essentially trying to do something. So how can you have flow state if you're trying something? So there's just like, there's a whole kind of thing there. But at the same time, that trying develops awareness, develops that muscle observation and recognition, and it builds that into the body so that there is the recognition of times when you're totally out of flow, of times when you're totally clenched up, of times when you're clenching, and so you can release that. So I see the breath. It's very whatever. There's a lot of different parts to it, but primarily when you think about like breath work, that term breath work or breath practice, essentially it's a kind of practice. You could use it to get into a state, but that's very wanting. And rather, it's kind of becoming familiar with that like light bulb. Becoming familiar, because that familiarity then can be used in all types of things that you can't even imagine, including in a muscle memory type deal where you're not having to do anything, and that becomes a very useful kind of effect of this kind of breath. So I started doing, how are we on time, Mikey?
Yeah, 15.
Thank you. I started doing these experiments of people's breathing patterns when they were at the computers and finding that I could actually change them by feedback, and I was like, yeah, I'm like a total like Frankenstein person, like really influencing people's state of mind. But that was like so far from what I knew we needed to go, and where we needed to go was something that was like, people could just nod and be like, yeah, and it's not just us, but like everybody, like my mom, like your moms, like everyone could just be like, this totally makes sense. Like this isn't like out there at all. Like it just makes perfect sense. It's pretty, all that, right? So this is Spire. I jumped a few things. So I mentioned we did this belt. We were like, we need to make a non-belt. We need to make something that you could just like, clip on and go, like a Fitbit. And so the first thing we created, this wasn't the first thing, but like the first kind of decent thing we created was this. And this was like the first, usable Spire, still breathwear at the time. And people actually wanted to buy this because it's like pretty nice, it's not bad. It's quite thick. And the idea was you measure the movement of the abdomen and it's called abdominal excursion every time you inhale and you exhale. And you don't need skin contact to do that. So what you do is you would wear this on your bra or at your waistband like that, and every time you breathe, it's kind of pushing against this sensor. And the sensor is so sensitive that it's a pretty cool sensor. It's like looking at these very subtle fluctuations of the abdomen. But you can see this bulge over here, not here. So you have this, but then this is bulky, and so we finally kind of whittled it down to something like this. So again, this is not the final thing. This is a model, but it's it's just like that, you know. And it's not painted. It's actually like a prototype unit, but it's it's small and it's got this very strong clip, so it never falls off. It's inspired by knives that people would wear and clip on, and you just put it on like that, right? And it measures the physical activity. It measures respiratory activity. It also measures the body position. Are you sitting? Are you standing? Ooh. That's a good one. She likes body. And then if you notice, there's no way to plug this thing. You don't have to plug this thing into anything. It's just this. It's inspired by a stone. So again, it's like breath. It's natural. It's not just like these wires and weird electrodes and things. It's just like, hey, it's like a stone. It's like you have the power. The power is within you. It's your breath. You don't need a sensor, but if you want one, this actually will really help. So it's the stone, and it just drops onto this. This is like this wireless charging pad. You don't have to plug it in, and the battery lasts for like a week. So you just like go like this. You just take the thing out, you just like go like that, and it just goes, it starts like charging. And the reason for that was just really trying to make it like nodding and like people being like, cool, that's cool, like I like that. And you can also plug your phone into this, and it will charge your phone too. So it's not like another thing that you have to like deal with and more wires. Actually, it's not more wires, it's just like it's associated with your phone. So there's a whole bunch of intention and thought put into all this. But okay, so now what I want to show is some cool data. So Amade over here, he's one of our interns of the Spire team. He's the tall guy. You gotta stand up, man, because they're looking behind you. Yeah, this is Amade. He's one of the interns on our team. He's awesome. He's here today and helped us collect data, analyze data, all types of stuff. We did this interesting little experiment. So okay, there's all this interesting stuff about starting a company to bring this idea out and to make it palatable and not just to the mainstream, but also to you guys, because you guys have to respect it and like it and nod and be like, yeah, like this is not bullshit, like this is cool, like it's science and it's legit, and I could see it providing real value because you guys are the early adopter and influencers that would go and tell your other friends like, this thing's actually pretty cool. It's not like bullshit, it's cool. And it is. Actually, before I show that. Okay, so one thing I was going to say before I started was that, I'm really into meditation, consciousness, like all that. I like done all this stuff. I go to Burning Man, all that, totally into it. But I'm also like, my culture and my history is I'm Iranian. I'm Iranian American. I'm apple pie and korma sabzi, like totally both. And Iranian style is like, just like, don't take it so seriously. Like, take it like with a grain of salt, do poetry on it, dance on it, kind of study it and do the science and engineering, but also have fun and just like keep it light, because lightness is good for the breath, which is good for the mind. You just kind of have fun with it. So that's my kind of attitude about it. So we have a blog where we have fun. We have fun and we like talk about the breath, but we try not to get too serious about it, because if you get too serious about something, you clench up about it. So just kind of, we do like comics and things like that. So we wanted to see the breathing patterns in different kind of everyday activities. So one of them was reading a book with paper. And it looks something like this. Now this is just the N=1. It's not like an experiment, publishable thing, but this is just, what is this, like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Just reading. Now, one thing you notice is, wow, person's just reading and there's all this variance? Like, what the hell? Like, you're just sitting there reading words. And this is where the consciousness stuff comes in. It's really cool. Because, what are words? Words are totally influencing your state of mind, and they're creating imagination, and all these things are happening, and it's creating like clenching, and when's the next sentence coming, and all these other things that are happening, and that's like totally changing these very subtle things about these inhales and exhales. Not only that, but how the inhale turns into exhale, how the exhale turns into inhale, which have direct ramifications of your mind at that Buddha level that we were talking about earlier. So that was reading. a book. Then you look at working at a computer. This wasn't like, you got a big deadline, do all this. It was just like working at a computer, like really normal, like totally normal. This is your everyday. In fact, we are like, we don't have a very stressful work environment. We actually do right now, but some of us have really stressful work environments that are much crazier than that. So there's a couple of things to notice. Of course, there's more breaths in the same amount of time. So that has a whole interesting thing to it. Heart rate's going to be higher because, anyway, it's a whole physiological thing. But there's also these little interesting events. What was that? Like a really small breath. And by the way, Spire has accelerometers in it and body position sensing, so it knows the position of your body, it knows when you're moving or not, so it can know if the breath was related to a movement or to the state of mind. And it will differentiate those. That's a crucial, important thing. So I'm going to go back and forth. This was reading a book. This was just doing normal work, like email, things like that. So imagine how many hours a day you work at a computer and wondering why you're fatigued at the end of the day and kind of like can't have that clarity of thought that we had in the shower early in the day and all that stuff. And then we did like a really simple, like straightforward meditation. Not like yogis on a mountain, but like, a meditation that you would do like just like a normal thing. Quite different from even reading, right? That was reading. This might have been some kind of like, something clearly happened. This might have been a kind of like a sigh, like they were like breathing. I was like, which is a whole interesting thing of why we sigh. That's really cool because it's a breath thing. And then we did a deep meditation where we actually were doing a meditation where it wasn't just like a kind of quieting the mind. It was like really trying to, it was more of a quieting the mind, not just kind of relaxing and bringing down the body. Like really quieting the mind. So just things you notice, first of all, of course it's slower, but it's more consistent. But even in this state, every breath is a snowflake. Every breath is a snowflake. We have data on more breaths than like anybody, and they're each unique. And it makes sense, the mind is fluctuating so much. There's never a same moment of mind. So how could there be the same moment of a breath? So, of course, Spire differentiates between these states and does these things. That's what I want to show you next. Is like, okay, you have all this data, what do you do with it? So that's like a whole design talk where so maybe another time we can talk about how do you design this for everyday use. So, focus. Up there, tense, being relaxed. You can do this. Like, you can actually go into like do meditation and deep meditation or all that. And there's intensity of all these different things. There's different characteristics of all these things. So the product is like meant to really, you can just use it by anybody. You don't have to be a consciousness hacker to use this, which is kind of the point because we want the whole world to have access to this and benefit. And then now, I want to show something really exciting. Who here has heard of Stephen Porges' polyvagal theory? Yeah. So, right on. So, he's our chief scientific advisor. I stopped him at an event where all these neuroscientists were talking about meditation and everything like that, and I just told him, I was like, Stephen, look, this is what we're doing. His wife, just so you know who Stephen Porges is, he did all the HRV stuff. He's the father of HRV, essentially. And respiratory science, arrhythmia, and polyvagal theory, if you go on Wikipedia, it's like the vagus nerve and how it can be stimulated in different ways. It's a fascinating guy. His wife, I'm going to blank on this, I forget, like the oxytocin. Who's heard of oxytocin? Okay, she's the woman that started that. Yeah, she started oh yeah, just being conversational. But she was the person to find that like this is the love hormone and it's pairing and bonding and all this. I don't know a lot about it, but I know she's the one that did it. And but they're a couple. I had no idea, but they're a couple. So he's our advisor and he heard what we were doing, and he constantly gets propositioned by all these companies doing HRV stuff and RSA stuff and all this stuff, and he saw what we were doing. We don't even measure HRV. We can't right now in the current sense, if you will, but we're not doing it now. And he got that this is very actionable. This can have a real effect beyond the like, okay, I'm going to sit down and do this thing and do this biofeedback exercise. We don't even consider this biofeedback, really. I never considered my work biofeedback. Of course, it can be used in like that, but it doesn't have to be. So one of the things we showed him, which I got really excited about, was data that no one's ever seen before. That because we have this breath sensor that people are using in their everyday lives, and it's collecting this super accurate data in ways that haven't been seen before. So he's like testing on these new theories, and he's coming up with new things based on the data. Things like this. This is a real person's day. What you have here is breath rate on the bottom. I don't know how many people are into this kind of graph, but I'm just going to show it. So it's like, okay, 16 breaths a minute. That's like average, 15, 14, whatever. This is inhalation-exhalation ratio. Remember I was telling you guys that clenching versus the letting go and trusting, those state of minds have direct ramifications on the breath. This is the ratio of inhale to exhale, which I never even thought was interesting, but now it's so interesting. And so the relationship between breath rate, inhalation, and exhalation ratio hasn't been explored, especially in everyday life. So we're finding really interesting clustering of states of mind and throughout people's day, and being able to do interesting things with it. So this was reading, working, a little more intense, and meditation. Slower, but also lower, longer exhale, more letting go. On the flip side, another user, same experiment, reading and working, quite overlap, quite similar. Meditation, big shift for them. Huge shift, almost inexplicably higher up here. I actually know why. They were doing their meditation as like this, kind of emphasizing the inhale, which has a very different effect on the brain, on the vagus nerve, all that. But it's not bad or good. It's different. It's a different state of mind. Yeah. 3 minutes. Thank you. So I was just showing some of this. It also, of course, tracks movement because, our bodies are cool and useful and they're interesting, and we want to take care of them, our physical bodies. So making sure we get movements and all that. So we do some really interesting, like real-time. The app is super responsive. It feels like it's alive. You'll see it later, but every time you breathe, you exhale, the app fogs up the screen. So you're looking at you're like, whoa. And then the last part is that, okay, it's cool, you can do this awareness, it tracks these things for you in different ways, but then also, this is what's so cool about the breath, it's actionable. It's not just feedback, it's actionable. You can do something, it's guidance, like it can help you, guide you to make a shift. And that's where we have been experimenting and have a lot of interesting people that are interested in working with us in creating like little activities that you can do throughout your day, like in like 30 seconds or 10 seconds or 10 minutes or whatever. So here's like the fog, actually it's fogging up, and slow breath, little activity. So imagine you get a push that says, hey, you haven't taken a deep breath in half an hour. Like, you're like, oh my God. And it's like, is that enough? Yeah, okay, thanks. Or is it like, do you want to play like a little game to kind of like shift? And it's like, or do you want an activity or listen to something if you want to? It's like, yeah, you know what? I want to like clear my head and really shift back and like prioritize or whatever I'm doing at that time. So then you can kind of choose to do that. So you can do different kinds of activities. And again, this is a place where we want ideas. We want to experiment with people. We have an API. We want people to create things and invent things. Like it could be like music. It could be like just whatever. It could be to integrate into Aspire and bring it out into the world and to influence and affect the state of mind. So that's Aspire. We are Oh, I'm creating a discount code for consciousness hacking community. So don't forward it. Be used only by the people in this room. Let's make it the people in this room. I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of people that are perhaps on the meetup but don't come here. I don't know. I'll ask you, Mikey. But we're gonna create a. I'll do it today, where you guys will have a discount, and we have an API. So some of us in here are hackers of like the this kind of hacking, and so we like totally want to work with you guys and give you your ideas, support you, and we can be a platform for you to do whatever you want to do. What else do I want to say? Yeah, it's going to be $149 retail. So we're going to be like in stores this fall, believe it or not, like real stores, like mom or but it's a discount now in the pre-order, and then we're going to like for this we're going to do an additional discount. So it's going to be like a good deal, and you can buy couples. People buy couples versions, so it's like for me and my wife or a partner or whatever. And you can also buy like a group pack. A lot of people are buying like 10 of them for studies. So researchers will do that. We had a group buy 100 of them because they're doing this stuff with the Dalai Lama and Italy and all this wild stuff. So we're really open and we're excited. We really want to support you. We want your feedback. We're here to like totally serve you guys. You know, like because you guys are the ones that know have ideas about this and opinions about how it could be done. So we're here to support you. And thank you very much. And I'll take any questions.
We'll take about 10 minutes for questions.
Yeah, I think
So what will the code be?
What will the code be? What do we want it to be? I was thinking like,
Here now.
ooh, I like it. Okay, cool. Here now. So it'll be aspire.io/r/here now. All undercase, no space, no underscore, just here now. HERENOW. That's good though.
Is that backslash or is that hyphen?
It'll be, sorry, a slash, like this slash. Amanda, you gonna make it, or are you gonna do the? Okay. So
I can email, depending on what you want, either just to this group or to the whole group, so we
Okay.
can decide later. But if you check your email,
Yeah.
also.
It'll be
come through
spire.io
Meetup.
and you have to use that link. It's not like a code. It's like a secret link. So please don't.
Have you looked at the correlation between the measurements Spire is doing and, like, for instance, the blood oxygenation level at all? Or
So the question was, have we looked at so the technical term for the data that Aspire generates is respiratory effort. Respiratory effort is your body is doing this kind of,
Sure.
That's what it's called. So it's, he's saying, have you done any correlative studies looking at respiratory effort and blood oxygenation, right?
Yeah.
You're asking?
But you've got like a little bit more data than they usually use for respiratory effort studies because you've got accelerometer in there as well.
Yeah, right.
So I'm wondering if you could maybe predict a little bit more accurately how oxygenated you're going to be than you normally get from a respiratory blood study.
Yeah, to be frank, like it's like getting this out the door has meant that we haven't been able to do
Fair enough.
a lot of these studies, and we don't have all the expertise in house. Frankly, I mean, we're like, people are like just an engineer trying to get it out the door. So the answer is no. But the answer is like enthusiastics want to experiment, want to do anything that people have ideas about. So that's the answer.
Thank you. Do you have a time frame in which you expect to have Android support?
Question about Android support, that's the number one question that we get. And we don't have a time frame. That doesn't mean that we're not like really interested. It's just you don't want to say a date, but it's like very important to us. So yeah. So the reason is that we have to like get this app like totally done, and then it's like we can't do both at the same time. So that's why. Yeah.
There's a lot of different yogic theories about different pranayama techniques, evoking different states of the mind and being. This might be a really neat way to validate that.
Yeah, like breath of fire and different kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I brought this to some yogis who like will do some breathing pranayamic things, and when you watch the pattern and kind of see their breath visually, and have everyone else get this window into their breath instead of like, okay, telling your students like just do it like this and trying to guess how it works. See it? Yes, we would love to do the studies.
To what extent do the apps and interruptions already exist? So that you're wearing it throughout the day?
Yeah. Oh, the app exists. The app is not finalized, but it works. It exists. We use it on a daily basis, and we've done studies with it. We actually did a pilot at LinkedIn, employees at LinkedIn, and this was not the consciousness hacking crew, but it was people that were interested, and we had amazing. In fact, we had a guy that literally changed his resting breathing, or not his mean breathing rate from Monday to Friday. He brought it down like 15%. So he's like just with that feedback and that breath awareness, just by wearing it, honestly, you get a lot of the effect. Just by wearing this thing that you know is like aware of your breath, so you're aware of your breath. And
Well, that was it. And I guess
Yeah.
from there, I'm curious, how much does one looking at the data need to be aware of, okay, so Tuesday at 10 a.m. I was in a meeting, and Thursday at 3 in the afternoon, like how much do you have to have a recollection of what
No,
you're doing?
like you don't have to have anything. So we try to totally manage it. It's not that kind of experience. There's going to be layers and layers of like complexity that we're going to roll out, and like things you can do and ways you can analyze the data. But like you're going to like keep it simple like initially, and then add more and more.
Have you seen the work of the Heart Math Institute?
Yes.
And their metrics seem to be the simple test was around heart rate variability.
Right.
So.
How are you different?
Oh, yeah. I'm an advisor.
You are?
Yeah. Roland and Debbie and Doc, awesome people. So the cardiorespiratory system
Right.
is a highly interconnected system. So every time you inhale, your heart rate goes up. Every time you exhale, your heart rate slows down. You can observe this yourself. When you're meditating, just watch get it so you can actually feel your heart rate, and then like look at the breath. You'll be like, it's going up, and it's like slowing down. Like, what is going on? So,
Two more questions. You're good.
questions. How are we different? The big difference is that we're focused at the layer of breath. They're kind of like this, right? It's the system. And we're focused on here because it's immediately actionable. And exactly. Conscious. And heart rate variability is like a score that you get from a system that is amazingly interesting and informative, but is you kind of have to like focus on it, work on it in order to get the number down. It's just a very different experience.
Deeper window.
It's a deeper window, and well, no, because actually heart math uses breath as well. So we can talk about it offline. Yeah. Yes.
How much work have you done in tandem with other systems? So I do dream research, and I've looked at EEG and I look at fMRI, and it seems like putting together, for example, just an EEG with this together with dream would be really interesting research for me. Have you done a lot of in tandem with other kinds of readings?
We haven't yet.
Okay.
We haven't yet. We've done a little bit, but just getting this out the door has been the primary thing. So we're now kind of at a point where we can like, okay, let's like do all types of, like the Muse people, they want to like collaborate with us and do things. We're open. We're very open. We're actually, talking about open, we're like one of these companies that's like super transparent. So we're like, we have the API already. It's like, you get your data. Like we're kind of that sort of thing.
Let's do our last question.
Just a product question. When you were designing it, how did you choose that it had to be its own hardware device versus, I guess, maybe a couple of things to throw out, waiting for a different version of the operating system or on phones, which could allow background sensing with the accelerometers that are already in your pockets.
We talked to enough people that people don't. First of all, it wasn't clear that you could actually get respiratory pattern from a phone in your pocket. It's because it's like down
It's too far
here.
down. Yeah.
Well, it's here, yeah. But even if you could, it was like you would need to have it here, and that was just kind of like.
Or other devices that people are already wearing, which have accelerometers, like the Fitbits and all the different.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially created a Fitbit that also does breath.
And
You
so
don't
do you
have to
believe,
wear a
do you believe it'll be, do you believe that that will be an entry point and then you will add the other ones? Or do you believe people will buy separate ones and have like a breath one and a pacing one, a hard one? Like, what do you
No,
basically play out?
Well, that's an interesting question. You don't need to wear a Fitbit and this. This
Yeah.
is 10 times more than a Fitbit. It's more actionable, and I'm sorry, it's more accurate than a Fitbit.
You think you're going to win? No, I'm not just asking a question. Like,
Yeah, that's not mine. That's not how I'm thinking about it. But I'm happy to talk about it because that's a reality. We have to make money to make things and get
Okay,
going
yeah,
and move
yeah.
forward. So we can talk about it maybe.
Cool.
Cool. All right.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.